This is release question 160 for CAHSEE Math. It says if A is a positive number and B is a negative number, which expression is always positive? So I want you to think of a positive number and a negative number. We're going to do that here. We'll come up with one together here as we go through this. So let's consider a positive number and a negative number. Let's think this through here. If you have a positive number and you add a negative number to it, is that always going to be positive? If it's not always going to be positive, we should be able to come up with what we call a counterexample. So I'm going to start with choice B here. I'm going to go back to choice A in a little bit. But a counterexample for this, if it's not possible, you should be able to come up with numbers where it doesn't always work out to be positive. And so if I picked A as some positive number here, let's pick 2. So let's say A is 2, and I add something that's bigger than 2 but negative to that, so like negative 5. This would be negative 3. Is that always positive? No, clearly not. I just came up with a counterexample to that. So that's a negative symbol right there. A little hard to read that. That's a huge eraser right there. There we go. That's a little better. So that's a negative 3 right there. Notice not always positive. I could come up with an example where it is positive, but this says always positive. So choice B, no, it's not going to be that. I could use the same two examples or two numbers here for A and B to show you that A times B is not going to work out to be always positive either. So 2, if I did 2 times negative 5, I would get negative 10. There's a counterexample. It's not always going to work out that way. Another counterexample here. Could I use the same numbers again? I could, but why don't I use ones that are a little easier to think of? So A is positive. Let's say 6 and divided by negative 3 now in this case. 6 divided by negative 3, positive divided by negative would be a negative. 6 divided by 3 would be 2. And so here's examples where they do not work out. So it seems like choice A is our answer choice. And so, but let's put some examples here. Just showing a couple examples doesn't prove it's true, but it can help us at least verify that it is true. On the CAHSEE, you're not going to have to do formal proofs, but you should know at least how to show some examples showing that that would be true. So if you had, let's use the numbers I used here, 2 plus, or not 2 plus, 2 minus, sorry, 2 minus, there it goes, 2 minus a negative. You're going to be doing this every single time. A minus a negative number, negative value is always going to change that to a plus sign, so you'd have 7 here. If you did 6 minus negative 3, you'd have 9, and so on. You could come up with more examples, but these ones you can come up with counterexamples. So if you can come up with at least one counterexample, that proves it's not always positive here. If you could come up with a counterexample here, that would prove that it's not always going to be positive, but it's not possible. If you take a positive minus a negative, it'll always change to a positive plus that, whatever that number, that numeric value is, and you would always get a positive value for choice A.